In 1948, Willowbrook State School opened its doors on Staten Island, New York. It was promoted as a groundbreaking institution, a place where children and adults with disabilities could receive therapy, education, and compassionate care. I am Michelle.
And I am Isaiah, and we welcome you back to Shifting Veils, where we talk the unexplained, the possibly paranormal, and always strange. And in this episode, the tragically criminal.
If you like this type of content, be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and share so more admirers of the curious can find us.
Families often overwhelmed and under resourced were told by doctors and social workers that Willowbrook was the best option available. Basically, doctors would tell the parent, just hand them over to the school. We will care for them and give them what they need. You should go on with your life. Just completely abandon them.
It's brilliant.
Don't worry, you raise these kids. We'll raise them from now on.
It's to me, it's reminiscent of the '80s whenever like the public service announcements would come on as it got dark. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah, the street lights are popping on. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah, that's the era we grew up in.
Yeah,
I love it. There's parts of it that are better than the way things are now.
yeah, I guess so.
I mean, not necessarily the parts like that.
I mean, I talked to friends about this before. Just like we always called it the golden age. There isn't really anything super spectacular about it. We just had different forms of entertainment and different ways to live life, basically.
We definitely did.
But anyway,
It was fun. It was fun.
we drank from water hoses. We had
Yeah.
rock fights.
If my parents knew how far I rode my bike away from home,
My
oh my
parents didn't know
gosh.
where I was.
Yeah, right?
I don't even think my parents saw that little advert in the towards 11 a.m. or p.m.
Oh, that's, do you know where your children are? Who the fuck knows? Honey, can
do
you give
you
me another beer?
do you know where your parents are?
Right?
Yes, the bar
Casino.
stool. The bar
Right.
stool.
Barstool or casino. Mine was always at the casino. My
Okay.
dad. Yeah.
No, my parents were either at work or at the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But behind the gates of Willowbrook, a different reality unfolded. The facility quickly became overcrowded and understaffed. Disease spread easily in cramped quarters, and basic hygiene was difficult to maintain. Despite the wide range of disabilities among residents, care was not tailored to individual needs. Instead, a one size fits all approach prevailed, one that ignored medical complexities and emotional well being. So,
Sounds wonderful.
somebody's got a broken leg, they'll be like, hey, just rub some dirt on it.
Right.
It's all good.
Right.
They'll figure it out.
Spit on it.
Yeah. While the facility was built to house 4,000 residents, at its peak there were actually upwards of 6,000 residing there, most of which were children. Remember, we had a lot of parents abandoning their children there.
Yeah.
Many were left alone for hours without supervision or support. At least those parents knew where their children were.
Bring them here so we can ignore them.
Right. Their basic needs like food, cleanliness, and safety were often unmet. And we're laughing about this, but it is not. It's a sad situation.
Uh yeah. I mean, I'm laughing about the idea. I'm not really laughing
Laughing
that they're
at the
being
jokes.
neglected. It's actually really horrible. It's what's funny is that it was thought to be okay. Like that's
Yeah.
just it's so horrible that it's kind of unfathomable. Um like to have children and view them that way. Whenever it seems like well, I know not every parent's like this, but for the most part, we invest in them so much, you know.
Hmm.
And at this point, they're like bring them here. We'll handle it. Don't worry about it. You shouldn't trouble yourself. You know, we
I
got
mean,
this.
this falls into the whole sort of situation too, where like women back in the day were put into asylums. I mean, this is
Yeah.
basically the same sort of
Going to
situation where it's like
asylum.
your children are acting out, they're being
Right.
rebellious. Bring them here. We'll take care of them. We'll let them
Right.
sit in a corner for 20 hours straight.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Therapy and education, once promised, were rare. Over time, reports surfaced of neglect and inhumane treatment. What was meant to be a sanctuary had become a place of suffering. Physician William Bronston would later describe the facility as a human warehouse.
As the situation worsened, medical professionals within the institution began to speak out. Dr. Michael Wilkins revealed that within just 6 months of admission, every single resident had contracted hepatitis, a staggering 100% infection rate. The outbreak was so pervasive that researchers exploited it using residents in medical experiments.
They're just like, you know what? Let's take advantage.
Right? Many were deliberately exposed to the virus without their consent. Dr. Saul Krugman fed children an extract made from the feces of infected patients to study the course of the disease and test a hepatitis vaccine. That's disgusting.
Ooh.
What exactly do you mean extract made from feces? So it's like poop juice or what? I don't understand. This is nasty.
It's a bit nutty.
Ugh. Corn. There's corn in mine. That's just nasty. Again, not funny. Sorry. Parents desperate to secure placement for their children and the only facility available were often misled. Participation in these medical trials was framed as a pathway to admission, leaving families with little choice. In the pursuit of care, they unknowingly became part of a system that prioritized research over humanity.
Wait, what do you mean that it left the families? The families abandoned them there. What
Yeah.
choice did they really care to make?
Well, they went, some of them probably, not all, some of
Mhm.
them probably went wanting help because their child had a an illness that just really wasn't well understood at the time. You can call it, I mean, even like ADHD or anything under the spectrum or depression or just anything. I mean, they could have epilepsy. I'm sure that was one of the things. And
Yeah,
they go wanting help because they haven't been able to find help anywhere else. And this place is supposed to be wonderful,
yeah. They
you know.
promised. They promised help.
And they agreed to allow their children to be part of these experiments because it allowed them to be admitted, you know.
Hmm.
Um Healthcare isn't cheap. And in this case, it was probably cheaper or free, you know.
Yeah, I mean they were committing experiments on them, so it was probably well paid for by somebody.
Yeah. I think we get into who pays for some of this here in a minute or in a little bit. It wasn't until 1965 that Willowbrook State School gained public attention when Senator Robert Kennedy visited the facility. He was shocked by the conditions, describing residents as living in filth and dirt, wearing rags, and staying in rooms less comfortable and cheerful than the cages in which we put animals in the zoo. His visit, along with investigative articles by journalist Jane Curtin, brought national focus to the institution. In response, the New York state government announced a 5-year plan to improve conditions. However, progress was limited. At the time, people with disabilities were often devalued by society, and state officials showed little concern for their well being. Because Willowbrook operated as a total institution, isolated and tightly controlled, unsafe and inhumane conditions quickly returned.
Didn't last.
Hmm?
Didn't last. I said it just everything returned.
Yeah, it didn't last. People were appalled and we're going to change this, and then next week it was old news.
Well, I mean, it's they were able to do experiments.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, why would they change that situation?
We're about to find out why. Why they would.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting, asking questions, whereas because it's like another
No, you
paragraph
should.
later.
No, you should ask questions. I think, in cases like this, what we're approaching is, whenever someone comes in that has clout, someone that is publicly known, stands up, and you would think that, Kennedy saying something would be enough, but it, I guess it wasn't. So you have someone else come in that people pay attention to and they talk enough. That's one thing, but maybe they need to show you. Maybe the public needs to see it for themselves, not just hear a sentence describing it, you know?
Mhm. In 1972, investigative reporter Geraldo Rivera released a powerful expose called Willowbrook, The Last Disgrace, revealing the shocking conditions inside the Willowbrook State School. Two doctors at Willowbrook, William Bronston and Michael Wilkins, helped make the investigation possible. They invited Rivera to visit the facility and gave him access to Building 6, where he filmed what he saw. He visited the unit without warning, which meant the staff couldn't clean or prepare ahead of time. This gave him a real look at the everyday conditions. He later described the experience as deeply disturbing, saying, "The doctor warned me it would be bad. It was horrible. It smelled of filth, it smelled of disease, and it smelled of death."
Those doctors letting him in there are like, oh, gee. I mean, that's just, can you imagine not getting, if he wouldn't have gotten access to go in there, people wouldn't have seen that.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen this expose?
No, but I've seen Willowbrook before. I've done my research on Willowbrook before. This is one of those places that I've talked about before where they insist that they're helping. They insist that this is the place to go. And like
Mhm.
you see children curled up in corners, you see beds lining hallways, and these beds aren't clean. The sheets aren't clean. The mattresses aren't clean. There is literal shit on walls. Everything's, scrawled on the walls. The windows are either busted or they're covered with, newspaper. I've
Yeah,
seen like pictures of this place,
yeah.
and yeah, it's not pretty and it is not healthy.
You can find it on YouTube for anybody that is interested. But when they were filming, it was complete darkness in there. Like the only light was the light from the camera. And they are literally curled up on feces covered mattresses in the corner of rooms. I mean, they're filthy. They're unstimulated, they're untreated, they're malnourished. It
They're
was horrible to see,
they're
really.
literally wandering around rooms and hallways. There's not enough staff to take care of these. I mean, there's like it said upwards of 6,000 people, like residents there,
Mhm.
and the staff is a normal, you know 5-person, 6-person, 7-person staff. Like that's nowadays, like even when it comes to like schools and stuff, we have a ratio that needs to be met. A
Right.
teacher per so many students,
Right.
and it didn't meet those kind of requirements. I mean, but this is way
Not at
back in
all.
the day too. This is way back in the day.
Yeah. This is in 1972. Yeah,
Right.
it's back in the day.
Rivera and his team saw heartbreaking scenes during their visit. Children were crowded together on the floor, covered in their own waste. One staff member was responsible for more than 50 residents. Many of the children were left alone, without proper care, education, or social interaction. The footage from this visit shocked viewers across the country and helped spark major changes for the disability community. But sadly, Willowbrook was not the only state funded institution that such atrocities took place.
Atrocities.
Atrocities. Welcome to the Rock.
In 1896, Arthur Wentworth performed spinal taps on 29 young children without the knowledge or consent of their parents at Children's Hospital Boston. It's now Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, to discover whether doing so would be harmful. Let's see if this hurts.
Hey, let me punch you real hard in your arm. Let's see if that hurts.
How does that feel?
Did it hurt?
In 1895, New York City pediatrician Henry Hyman, is that Hyman? I think it's
It
Hyman.
looks like Hyman.
Heman.
I mean,
He-
if it was if it was Japanese, it would probably be
It'd be-
Heyman.
Heyman. Okay. Let's say Heyman. Intentionally infected two mentally disabled boys, one 4-year-old and one 16-year-old, with gonorrhea as a part of a medical experiment. A review of the medical literature of the late 19th and early 20th centuries found more than 40 reports of experimental infections with gonorrheal culture, including some where gonorrheal organisms were applied to the eyes of sick children.
Jesus Christ. Like, what? Why?
For science.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, all right. At the Fernand State School in Massachusetts, researchers from Harvard and MIT, with funding from the Atomic Energy Commission and Quaker Oats, fed children radioactive calcium and iron in their oatmeal and milk. At Creedmoor State Hospital in New York, more than 90 children, some as young as 6, were given large, twice-daily doses of LSD in an experimental treatment for schizophrenia and autism.
Oh my god.
My silence is me staring at you. This is the kind of shit that, it's just why? Like, why?
That's cruelty. LSD to a schizophrenic patient. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Are you
How do you think that's going to help?
explain this argument to me, please? Because this is just ridiculous.
Giving
This
somebody with schizophrenia a hallucinogenic.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's just no.
And some as young as 6.
Yeah, that's horrible. God.
In California, at Sonoma State Hospital, children with disabilities were subjected to spinal taps for experimental purposes. The brains of every deceased child were also removed and studied without parental consent.
In 1908, 3 Philadelphia researchers infected dozens of children with tuberculin at St. Vincent Orphanage in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, causing permanent blindness in some of the children and painful lesions and inflammation of the eyes in many of the others. In the study, they refer to the children as material used.
Like, how disconnected do you have to be like that?
Mm. In Michigan State Institution, residents were infected with the flu viruses by having the virus sprayed into their nasal passages. At the Illinois State Hospital, psychiatric patients were infected with malaria. In 1909, Frank Knowles published a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association describing how he had deliberately infected 2 children in an orphanage with a virus that causes wart-like growths, but usually disappears entirely after an outbreak in the orphanage so he could study the disease. The author then goes on to admit that the mechanisms studied were already well understood and described in literature, so well, in fact, that he found the experiment unnecessary to practice, but he did it anyway.
Sure,
So
I
it
mean,
was already understood, but he did it anyway.
well, these were probably for his own understandings. He needed to understand. He's a hands-on person, right? So he probably had needed to learn hands-on.
Horseshit.
Fucking, you, that's why I need to ask. How disconnected do you have to be
Oh my
like this? Like,
gosh.
you are using children as experiments to sit there and be like, I'm going to inject this disease into your eyeballs.
Material used. Wow.
Let me just spray this up your nose.
Mm,
Breathe deep. Just
yeah.
The Proctor Foundation for Research in Ophthalmology conducted federally funded I'm sorry, I couldn't read it at first.
Oh, you're good?
the
That's a
Proctor
long word.
the Proctor Thanks for making me sound dumb.
You did good.
That's a big word. It's got 10 letters in it. Can you count the letters?
It has more than 10 letters. I can count them.
The Proctor Foundation for Research in Ophthalmology conducted federal funded medical experiments on indigenous children at multiple U.S. boarding schools to test treatments for trachoma,
Mhm.
a bacterial eye infection. 3 different drugs, including cycline, and doxycycline, and a placebo was given to test subjects to see how the trachoma would respond to it. Sadly, this experiment was done at so many of the boarding schools that a definitive list cannot be provided. Eventually, all of these operations and/or facilities were shut down and closed one by one due to public outcry or whistleblowing doctors.
They probably can't give us a definitive list because they just didn't make a damn list. Those indigenous children were just treated as material used. They didn't have names. I don't even know if they might not have even had numbers. That's why there's no list. There's no
Uh,
definitive list. They
it's
just didn't.
possible. I mean,
I
when
doubt
when
they
it
kept record.
when it comes down to it, and you guys hear me do this like every now and then and so often, and I'm sure Michelle gets tired of it periodically.
Oh my gosh, it's
But
horrible.
like, um, being indigenous, like having like you just see it throughout the past and
Yeah.
throughout history and stuff, and indigenous children and women are treated very much so just as underneath everything and everyone. Children have been passed back and forth through schools, boarding schools. They get taken away from their families to be with white families, Caucasian families, if you want to be politically correct. But you see a lot of that, and so being used as material like this, like
Yeah.
it's just normal.
Yeah.
Willowbrook was shut down thanks in part to the concerned parents of Willowbrook residents, who filed a class action lawsuit arguing that the school violated residents' constitutional rights by failing to provide habilitation services, lacking privacy protections, and offering inadequate medical care. In response, a federal judge approved the Willowbrook consent judgment. This agreement set clear operating rules and care standards for the school, and those requirements still influence disability services more than 50 years later.
The fallout from Willowbrook reached Capitol Hill and led to several landmark laws. The Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act created a protection and here we go again, advocacy system to defend people with disabilities. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act guaranteed that children with disabilities would receive proper schooling. The Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act ensured basic rights for everyone living in an institution. Together, these laws laid the groundwork for the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, and continue to shape how we respect and protect the rights of people with disabilities today.
With such legislation, we could only hope that we would not hear of neglect, abuses, and unethical experiments being conducted in federal or state funded facilities much anymore. But that isn't the case.
Yeah. No, it still happens.
In 2019, at the Glenwood Resource Center in Iowa, a state run facility for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a facility superintendent, Jerry Rhea, was dismissed from his position. Ria had a documented history of researching sexual behavior in people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He even held a patent for a device designed to measure sexual arousal. Under his leadership, Glenwood became the site of unauthorized and deeply unethical sexual arousal studies.
Weirdo. Freak.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a freak, okay? Let's hold on.
Well, what
This
he's
guy
doing. Yeah.
is, yeah. Federal investigations and court records later revealed the shocking details. Residents, many of whom could not consent,
Mhm.
were subjected to experiments involving sexual lubricants, pornographic materials, and silk undergarments. In some cases, staff altered residents' medications, allegedly to observe changes in sexual behavior. These changes reportedly led to severe side effects, including seizures.
Jeez.
Perhaps most egregiously, these experiments were conducted without the informed consent of the residents or their guardians. When the U.S. Department of Justice launched an investigation, staff members reportedly scrambled to obtain retroactive consent, an effort that underscored the lack of ethical oversight and transparency at the facility. This isn't fucking insurance. You can't just
Oh,
retroactively get this shit.
that's crazy. Silk undergarments. Really? This doesn't sound like science to me. This sounds like somebody with some weird fetish
Absolutely.
and a license. you know?
Absolutely.
They called it research, they called it progress, they called it care. But behind the sterile language of science and policy, behind the locked doors of institutions and the quiet corners of classrooms, there were children. There were patients. There were lives, unconsenting, unprotected, and often unseen. You know, it's crazy because yeah, that happened in 2019, but this stuff is still happening. And
Oh,
not
yeah.
just that, what I my mind keeps going while we're doing this episode. My mind keeps going back to when I worked in healthcare and I dealt with um, elderly patients and residents. And a lot of them uh, were not physically able anymore. Some of them were not mentally or cognitively able anymore. And they were pretty much, you know, at the whim of whoever was taking care of them. And I know that that demographic also gets taken advantage of and also is neglected and also is abused. Maybe not so much experimented on, but it's sad when someone that has power, authority, ability um, to completely care for another human being, and instead they decide to do things that are not for their well being in the end.
Hmm.
And I have to put it that way because sometimes we have to do things for our health that are uncomfortable and they don't feel good. They're actually painful. There's a lot of medical stuff we have to go through that doesn't feel good. But I mean, no one likes to get a root canal or a filling, but in the end, it is for your well being
Hmm.
that you get those things taken care of, even though they're uncomfortable and the shots hurt. But it's just wild to me that, um, yeah, that this is still
Uh,
going on.
I mean, my brain goes to, and this is definitely still going on, is coma patients.
Right,
Coma patients cannot make any sort of gesture or consent towards anything. They
right.
are in coma. And if you don't know what happens or can happen to a coma patient or has happened to coma patients, I mean, Not not that many years ago, there was a coma patient that gave birth, and it wasn't the first one. They
Right,
gave birth to a child.
right.
So put two and two together. Guess where that came from?
Yeah. And some people wake up from these comas and will tell you that they were completely aware of everything around them the entire time.
Yeah,
And to think about someone that is locked inside their body and they can't do anything whenever things like that are happening,
yeah.
you know.
Can't move their body. Can't fight back. Can't protest. Nothing.
Yeah, it's messed up. The story began with a promise that state and federally funded institutions would serve the public good, that schools would nurture, that hospitals would heal. But somewhere along the way, that promise was twisted. The vulnerable became test subjects, the curious became complicit, and the machinery of power, draped in the robes of academia and the seal of government, kept turning. We've traced the outlines of these experiments: radiation trials on children with disabilities, psychological manipulation in classrooms, sterilizations disguised as treatment, and data extracted from pain. We've named the institutions, we've read the memos, we've heard the testimonies. But this episode isn't just about what happened, it's about what echoes. Because the legacy of these experiments isn't confined to dusty archives or courtroom transcripts. It lives in the mistrust carried by communities who were targeted. It lives in the silence of those who were never given language for what was done to them. It lives in the policies that still prioritize control over care, efficiency over empathy. And it lives in us when we choose to remember. So, what do we do with this knowledge? We resist the urge to look away. We honor the survivors, not just with sympathy, but with action. We interrogate the systems that allowed this to happen and the ones that still do. We ask harder questions of our institutions, our schools, our governments, and ourselves. Because the truth is, unethical experiments don't begin with monsters. They begin with ordinary people who stop asking whether the ends justify the means. They begin with silence, with convenience, with forgetting. But remembering is a form of resistance. So, in this episode, as we close this chapter, we don't offer easy answers. We offer a call to listen deeper, to speak louder, and to build a world where care is never conditional and consent is never optional. The echo won't be silenced, and neither will we.